Nobody warned me that picking a fight with a celebrity would feel this satisfying. Then again, nobody warned me that same celebrity would show up in my life the very next week, grinning like he owned the air I breathed. That's the kind of absurd twist New York throws at you, where the sidewalks smell like ambition, sweat, and regret, and you can't escape the people you most want to avoid. I wasn't supposed to meet him again. Not after that humiliating night at the underground club in Brooklyn, where my mouth had gotten ahead of my brain. I'd spat out truths that should have stayed locked in my chest, truths about music, about what art really meant, and most dangerously, about him. About the golden-haired DJ who thought his beats could buy him immortality. His name was Jackson Vega. And somehow, after our public sparring match, words sharp enough to draw blood, he had decided I was the one person in the city worth chasing down. Jackson Vega was not the kind of man you ignored. He was tall in that effortless way, the kind of tall that made rooms adjust around him. His blonde hair glowed under stage lights, his laughter hitched the breaths of half the city's nightlife, and his beats pumped like a second heartbeat for anyone who surrendered to his music. He was chaos in human form, but chaos with charm, wrapped up in fame and glamour. And I, Elliot Moore, was the exact opposite. I wrote songs in the dark, words scribbled on napkins, melodies hummed into cracked phone recorders, pieces of myself stitched into lyrics nobody else wanted to sing. I was nobody, and I'd been comfortable in that anonymity. Until him. The night I first opened my mouth against Jackson, I hadn't meant to start a war. I'd only meant to defend myself, defend music that meant something. But the look in his eyes when I called him a soulless jukebox with too much hair gel had set the whole crowd roaring. He'd smirked, leaned into the mic, and fired back. At least I make people dance, not cry themselves to sleep with bad poetry. It had been ugly, raw, electrifying. And maybe, deep down, it had awakened something I wasn't ready to face. 1 week later, I was wiping down sticky tables at the cafe where I worked when he walked in. Not just walked, strolled, like the universe had been rearranged to fit him perfectly. His headphones dangled from his neck, his grin was sharper than a knife, and when his gaze landed on me, my stomach plunged like I'd missed a step on a staircase. "You're Elliot," he said, as if it were a punchline. "No," I muttered, focusing on the coffee ring I was scrubbing. "I'm a hallucination. Drink more water." He laughed, and the sound was infuriatingly magnetic. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. Most people don't argue with me and live to tell the tale." "Lucky me," I said flatly. But then he leaned closer, lowering his voice in a way that sent heat crawling up my neck. "I've got a proposal. Let's make music together." I froze. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Jackson Vega, world-famous DJ, golden boy of neon nights, wanted me, the nobody with coffee stains on his hands, to create with him. And that was the moment my life split into before Jackson and after Jackson. I should have said no. I should have laughed in his face and told him to crawl back to his VIP booth and his screaming fans. But the truth was, his words dug into me like hooks, because even as much as I hated him, his arrogance, his perfection, the way he turned art into product, something in me burned to prove I could stand beside him. So instead of no, I said, "You must be joking." He smirked. "I'm dead serious. You've got fire. I like it. You don't even know me. Then let me." Those 3 words were more dangerous than anything I'd ever heard, because beneath the cocky grin and the flash of fame in his eyes, there was something else. A dare, a challenge, promise. And against all reason, I wanted to take it. The first time we sat down to work, it was a disaster. He brought his sleek laptop, his glowing equipment, his endless samples of beats that pulsed like city veins. I brought my notebook, my old guitar, my voice, oil and water. He layered rhythms, I wrote lyrics. He wanted volume, I wanted silence. He wanted the crowd, I wanted the soul. We argued. God, did we argue? This line doesn't work, he said, pointing to my lyrics. A city that devours its children? What is this, a funeral? It's called poetry, I snapped. Sorry your fans wouldn't know depth if it bit them. He rolled his eyes. Newsflash. People don't want to sit around crying. They want to move. Music is supposed to free them, not chain them to their misery. And what if freedom means facing the misery first? I shot back. His gaze flickered then, something raw breaking through his bravado. For a second, the room felt like it belonged only to us. No beats, no lyrics, just silence thick enough to suffocate. Then he smirked, and the moment was gone. You're impossible, he said. Right back at you. But later, when he thought I wasn't looking, I caught him mouthing my words under his breath, as if they'd gotten stuck in him, as if maybe he felt something too. What neither of us admitted, not yet, was that the arguments weren't just about music. They were about us, about the way he leaned too close when he spoke, about the way his hand brushed mine when he reached for the same pen, about the way my chest tightened every time his laughter cracked the tension. I hated him. I wanted him. And in New York City, sometimes those two things are the same. The nights stretched longer. The studio became our battlefield, our confession booth, our sanctuary. We stayed until dawn, arguing, building, breaking, creating. He'd play a rhythm. I'd weave words through it, and for fleeting seconds, something greater than both of us sparked alive. It was dangerous, because every spark brought us closer to burning. One night, after hours of clashing, he slammed his laptop shut. You don't get it, he said, his voice low, frustrated. You think I don't care about music? You think it's just noise to me? You don't know what I've lost. I froze. He never talked about himself. He was always the mask, the performance. But now, in the dim light, his face looked younger, fragile. What did you lose? I asked. His jaw tightened. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. But then he whispered, my brother. He was the real musician. I just took his place. The beats, the shows. It's all I have left of him. The room tilted. My heart clenched. Suddenly, every layer of arrogance, every smirk, every careless laugh, none of it mattered. Behind it all was grief, sharp and unbearable. I'm sorry, I said quietly. He looked at me then, really looked, and in his eyes, I saw something I'd been too afraid to admit, a mirror of my own loneliness. That night we didn't argue. That night we created, together. And for the first time, the music wasn't his or mine. It was ours. That was how it started, the dangerous unraveling of walls neither of us had built to last. But the city was watching, and the city doesn't forgive love like ours. The studio was becoming my second home and my worst nightmare. Every time Jackson and I walked through those doors, I knew two things would happen. We'd fight, and we'd make something beautiful out of it. The strange alchemy of our partnership was exhausting. Some nights I stumbled home with my throat raw from yelling, my knuckles sore from gripping my guitar like it was a weapon. Other nights, I walked out trembling because his laughter had stuck to my skin, or his hand had brushed mine one too many times for me to call it an accident. It wasn't just music anymore. It hadn't been for a while. One evening, after hours of working on a track that kept slipping out of our grasp, I lost it. You don't listen, I snapped, slamming my notebook shut. You bulldoze over everything, every word, every breath, like nothing matters but your beat. Jackson leaned back in his chair, his blonde hair falling into his eyes. And you think your lyrics are sacred scripture. You act like if the world doesn't weep at your words, it's not real music. Because music is supposed to mean something, I shot back. It's not just noise to get drunk to. Something sharp flickered across his face. You think I don't know that? You think I don't feel every damn beat I make? Do you? I challenged. The silence that followed was so heavy I almost wished I could take the words back. Almost. But then he stood, closing the space between us in 3 deliberate steps. You don't see me, Elliot, he said, his voice low, almost a growl. You see the mask, the DJ, the lights, the crowd. But you don't see me. My chest tightened, because he was right. And yet, standing that close, the air between us humming with something dangerous, I felt like I was finally starting to. The fight ended not with words, but with silence. He leaned against the console, jaw tight, waiting for me to respond. Couldn't. My throat had locked up, my heart was pounding, and the room felt unbearably small. I did the only thing I could. I picked up my guitar. The first chord was shaky, the second steadier, and by the third, something cracked open in the air. I sang, low and rough, about loneliness in the city, about searching for something real under all the neon lies, about 2 souls clashing so hard they couldn't help but burn. When I looked up, Jackson was staring at me, not smirking, not mocking, just staring, like my words had reached into his chest and ripped something out he'd buried long ago. Again, he whispered. So I played again, and this time he joined in, tapping out a rhythm on the edge of the console, soft and steady, like a heartbeat. For once, we weren't fighting. We were listening. The song became our anchor. It wasn't finished, not even close, but it was the first piece of music that felt like both of us. His pulse, my words, stitched together into something raw and alive. We worked on it late into the night, until the city outside had gone quiet. And when dawn crept in through the blinds, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to leave. Not the studio, not the song, not him. But life outside those 4 walls wasn't so forgiving. Word had spread fast. Some paparazzi shot of us leaving the studio together at 3 a.m. had hit the blogs, and suddenly my phone was lighting up with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Are you dating Jackson Vega? Collab? Seriously? Careful. He'll chew you up and spit you out. I wanted to throw the phone into the river. Jackson, of course, was unfazed. Let them talk, he said with a shrug, scrolling through the articles like they were nothing more than weather reports. You don't care what people say about you? I asked, baffled. He looked at me with a crooked grin. Elliot, if I cared what people thought, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be me. Easy for him to say. He had a fan base big enough to swallow the hate whole. Me? I was just some guy, some nobody, and suddenly I was being dragged into a spotlight I never asked for. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. We were at a rooftop bar, one of Jackson's favorite haunts. The city sprawled below us, glittering and endless. He leaned against the railing, drink in hand, looking like he owned the skyline. Relax, he said, catching my tension. You're wound tighter than my bass line. Easy for you to say, I muttered. You thrive on this chaos. I can't. He tilted his head. So what do you want? Quiet nights scribbling songs no one hears? Living small so no one notices you? Yes, I snapped, then hesitated. No, I don't know. He smirked, but it was softer this time. You're afraid of being seen. I'm afraid of being ruined. That shut him up. For a moment, the only sound was the thrum of the city below. Then he set his drink down, stepped closer and said quietly, What if I promise not to ruin you? His eyes were steady, his voice almost gentle. And God help me, I wanted to believe him. Too much. But promises in New York are fragile things. and ours was about to be tested. The first sign came during a live set of his at a packed downtown club. I'd slipped in quietly, not wanting attention, but somehow he saw me through the strobe lights and the sea of bodies. He shifted the track mid-beat, weaving in a melody we'd written together, the unfinished song that had become our secret. The crowd went wild, oblivious, but my heart stopped. Because that song wasn't just music. It was us, and he'd just bared it to the world without asking. When the set ended, I stormed backstage. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "It was good music. It was ours," I shouted. "Not yours to use, not like that." His smile faltered. "Elliot." "No." I cut him off. "You don't get it. You can throw yourself to the crowd all you want, but I won't. I can't. Not with this. Not with us." For once, he didn't have a comeback. And for the first time since we started this dangerous dance, I walked away. But the thing about music, the thing about love, is that it doesn't let you walk away for long. Even as I slammed the door of my apartment and swore I was done, the melody lingered in my head. His laughter lingered in my chest. His eyes, God, those eyes, haunted me every time I closed mine. I hated him. I missed him. And the city didn't care either way. Silence. That was what followed me home after the fight backstage. Silence louder than any beat Jackson had ever dropped, heavier than any chord I'd ever strummed. For days, I didn't open my notebook. I didn't touch my guitar. The city outside my window pulsed with life, sirens, laughter, subway rumbles. But inside, I was frozen. I told myself I didn't need him, that I could go back to the way things were before. Scribbling lyrics no one heard, hiding in shadows where no spotlight could burn me. But the truth gnawed at me in the quiet. My songs felt hollow without his rhythms threading through them. My nights felt emptier without his voice, mocking or laughing or daring me to push further. I'd spent my whole life building walls, and in a matter of weeks he had torn them down. And now I was cold without him. Then came the phone call. It was late, past midnight, when my phone buzzed across the table. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my chest made me pick up. Elliot. His voice. Rough, tired. Not the polished charm of the DJ, not the swagger of Jackson Vega. Just Jackson. "What do you want?" My tone was sharp, but my hands were trembling. There was a pause. I heard him breathe in, shaky. "I messed up." I closed my eyes. Hearing that from him, Mr. Untouchable, Mr. Always Right, was almost worse than the fight itself. "You think admitting that fixes it?" I whispered. "No," he said quietly. "But it's all I've got. I shouldn't have played our song without you. I wasn't trying to steal it. He broke off, his voice catching. "I wanted the world to feel what I felt when we made it. I wanted them to know you." My throat tightened. Anger warred with something softer, something dangerously close to forgiveness. "You don't get to decide that for me," I said finally. "I know," his voice cracked. "But I can't stop hearing it, Elliot. I can't stop hearing you." The line went quiet, except for the sound of his uneven breathing. I hung up before I could change my mind. The next day, the headlines were worse. Paparazzi shots of Jackson leaving a club looking wrecked. Rumors of him canceling gigs. Fans demanding answers. And in the middle of it, whispers about me. My name, my face, dragged into a world I'd never wanted. Underground, nobody ruins Golden Boy Vega. Secret lover or secret collaborator? Who is Elliot Moore? And why is he important? Felt like drowning. I shoved my phone in a drawer and tried to pretend the world wasn't watching. But everywhere I went, the cafe, the subway, even walking down the street, I felt eyes on me. And I hated him for it. Hated him for pulling me into his orbit. Hated myself for not resisting the gravity. We didn't speak for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of silence, of headlines, of restless nights where my dreams were filled with unfinished songs and golden hair and eyes that saw too much. Until one night, I found myself back at the club where it all began. It was reckless, stupid, but something had pulled me there, maybe nostalgia, maybe masochism, maybe hope. The bass shook the walls, lights slicing through the smoke, and there he was up on stage, larger than life, commanding the crowd like a storm. But I could see it. Even from the back of the room, I could see it. He was empty. The beats were flawless, the drops explosive, but the soul was gone. The crowd danced like puppets, but he looked like a ghost. And then, God help me, his eyes found mine. Even through the haze, even through the crowd, he saw me. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't look away. After the set, I tried to leave before he could find me. But the universe, or maybe fate, had other plans. He caught me in the alley behind the club, breathless, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. "You came," he said, his voice raw. "Don't flatter yourself," I muttered, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets. "I was just passing through." He laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You're a terrible liar." Silence stretched between us, thick with everything we hadn't said. The rain had started, soft droplets tapping against the pavement. "Elliot," he said finally, stepping closer, "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be anything but Jackson Vega. But with you," his voice broke. "With you, I want to try." My chest ached. "Why me?" I whispered. "Because you fight me," he said. "Because you see me. Because when we make music, it feels like I'm alive again." The rain fell harder. My heart pounded louder. And for a moment, I hated him for saying the words I'd been too afraid to admit to myself. Because the truth was, I wanted him too. Wanted him in a way that terrified me. I didn't kiss him. Not that night. Instead, I walked away again, rain soaking through my jacket, his voice echoing in my ears. But this time, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was waiting. A week later, we saw each other again, but not by chance. He showed up at my apartment. No entourage, no cameras, just him, standing awkwardly in the doorway with a battered notebook in his hand. "What's that?" I asked warily. He held it out. "My brothers. He wrote songs too. I want you to see them." The gesture hit me harder than any apology ever could. He wasn't just asking me to look at pages. He was asking me to look at his grief, his past, his heart. And when I took the notebook from him, our fingers brushed, and something inside me broke open. We spent the night sitting cross-legged on my floor, going through his brother's songs. Some were raw, unfinished scraps. Others were hauntingly beautiful melodies aching to be sung. "He was better than me," Jackson said quietly, staring at the pages like they were holy. "No," I said softly. "He was different. But you're carrying him in your music. That's not lesser. That's love." His eyes met mine then, and for the first time there was no mask, no arrogance, just a boy who had lost too much, holding on to what he could. And for the first time I let myself want him without fear. The kiss happened like breathing, inevitable, unstoppable. One moment, we were staring at each other, the city noise filtering through the window. The next, his lips were on mine, soft and desperate, and I was kissing him back like I'd been waiting my whole life. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and trembling, teeth clashing, hands fumbling. But it was real. And when we finally broke apart, breathless, he whispered, "Now the music makes sense. But the world doesn't stay quiet." By morning, the headlines were louder than ever. A grainy photo of us through my apartment window had already hit the internet. Jackson Vega's secret romance exposed. And just like that, the world wasn't just watching, it was hunting. I thought the kiss had been the hardest part. I thought the moment my lips touched his, the world would crumble and rebuild into something softer, kinder. That maybe, just maybe, the universe would reward two broken people for finding each other. I was wrong. The world doesn't reward love like ours. The world punishes it. By morning, my phone was flooded. Headlines screamed my name like a curse, dragging every detail of my life into the light. Paparazzi camped outside my building. Strangers DM'd me with threats and slurs, mixed in with a few clumsy words of support that felt too fragile against the storm. And Jackson, he didn't hide. He went out to buy coffee, walked past the cameras with his hood up but his chin high. He'd lived in the storm so long it barely seemed to touch him anymore. But me, I was drowning. "Why aren't you saying anything?" I demanded one night, pacing my apartment while the shouts of reporters echoed from the street below. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, calm in a way that infuriated me. "Because if I do, it'll only feed them. They're tearing me apart," I snapped. "I'm not built for this, Jackson. I didn't ask for this." His eyes softened, but his voice stayed steady. "Neither did I once." I stopped pacing. "That's not the same, isn't it?" He pushed off the wall, stepping closer. "I was just a kid when all this started. My brother was gone, and suddenly I was in his place, under the lights, drowning in people who thought they owned me. I didn't ask for any of it, but it didn't matter, because once the world decides you belong to them, you don't get a say." His words hit like a fist. For the first time, I realized he wasn't calm because he didn't care. He was calm because he'd learned to live in a cage. And now, somehow, I was in it with him. The first concert after the scandal was chaos. I told him I wouldn't go, that the last thing he needed was my face in the crowd, another headline waiting to happen. But he insisted. "They'll already be looking for you. Better if you're by my side." So I went. And God, I wasn't ready. The moment we stepped out of the car, flashes blinded me. Reporters screamed questions like daggers. "Elliot, how long have you been with him? Is this a publicity stunt? Are you just using him for fame?" My stomach churned. My palms sweated. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But then his hand brushed mine. Not holding, not grabbing, just a touch. A grounding, steadying spark. And somehow I stayed. Backstage, the noise of the crowd rattled the walls. Jackson was pacing, headphones around his neck, jaw tight. "You don't have to do this," I whispered. "If the pressure's too much." He cut me off, eyes blazing. "This is what I do. The stage is mine. And tonight they're going to hear our song." I froze. "Jackson." He smirked, but there was no arrogance in it. Just determination. "You think I'm afraid of them? No, they should be afraid of us." And before I could argue, he was on stage. The crowd roared. The lights exploded. And in the middle of it, he dropped the beat that had haunted me for weeks. The melody we'd written. The words I'd bled onto paper. My words. His rhythm. Our music. The crowd didn't know what hit them. They swayed, they shouted, they screamed the chorus like it was gospel. And as I watched from the wings, my heart cracked open, because this wasn't just his stage anymore. It was ours. Afterward, the backlash doubled. Half the world loved it, called it brave, raw, revolutionary. The other half hated it, called it disgusting, career suicide, a betrayal of fans. And me? I was caught in the middle, bruised and battered by words from strangers who thought they knew me. One afternoon, while scrolling through another flood of venom online, I asked him the question that had been gnawing at me. Is this worth it? He looked up from the mixing board, brows furrowed. What? Us? All this? Is it worth losing everything? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, searching my face like he was memorizing every line. Finally, he said, "You're the only thing that's ever been worth it." But the world wasn't done testing us. Rumors spread that sponsors were pulling out of his tour. Clubs threatened to drop his gigs. Even some of his closest friends told him to cut the dead weight before it ruined him. The dead weight being me. I told him to let me go, that he'd be better off without me dragging him down. He laughed, sharp and bitter. You think I care about sponsors? About gigs? Let them walk. I don't need them. I need you. His words should have felt like salvation. Instead, they felt like chains, because I didn't want to be the reason his empire crumbled. The breaking point came at a press conference in Los Angeles. We stood side by side as reporters fired questions like bullets. Jackson, are you confirming a relationship with Elliot Moore? Elliot, what do you bring to this partnership besides controversy? Do you realize the damage you're doing to your careers? Jackson's jaw was tight, his fists clenched at his sides. But me, I snapped. You want to know what I bring? I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos. I bring honesty. I bring songs that bleed. I bring truth in a world that buries it under beats and lights. And if that's not enough for you, too damn bad. The room went silent. Cameras clicked, but no one spoke. Beside me, Jackson stared like I just set the world on fire. Then, slowly, he reached out and took my hand. In front of everyone. Gasps erupted, shouts, flashbulbs. But I didn't let go. And neither did he. Later, when the chaos died down and we were alone in the green room, I turned to him, still trembling. That was reckless, I muttered. He grinned, pulling me close. Yeah, but it was real. And for the first time since this all began, I believed we might actually survive it. The press conference was supposed to break us. Didn't. If anything, it became the turning point. For weeks afterward, the headlines were a battlefield. Half of them damning us, the other half defending us. The internet turned into a war zone, fans and critics tearing each other apart in comment sections and forums. Brands dropped Jackson, then new ones signed him just as quickly, eager to claim the story of rebellion and authenticity. It was chaos, but it wasn't silence. And silence is what kills artists. For me, the hardest part wasn't the noise. It was learning to live in it without letting it consume me. I used to think music was just a way out of my head, private refuge. But now, every song we touched became public property, dissected, judged, adored, or hated. It was terrifying. And yet, in the middle of it all, Jackson never once let go of my hand. The tour went on. Smaller venues than before, maybe, but more electric. Crowds packed in shoulder to shoulder, chanting lyrics we'd written together. The first time I heard an audience scream my words back at me, I nearly collapsed backstage. They know, I whispered, clutching my chest as the roar shook the walls. They really know. Jackson grinned, sweat shining on his face. Of course they do. You gave them truth. People always crave that, even if they're scared of it. He believed it so fully that I started to believe it too. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. My parents called once, voices heavy with worry. "This isn't the life we wanted for you, Elliot," my mother said softly. "All this attention, all this controversy, is it really worth it?" I wanted to say no, that I'd give it up in a heartbeat for peace, for quiet. But then I looked over at Jackson, lying on the couch across the room, headphones on, bobbing his head to a beat only he could hear. His eyes flicked up, caught mine, and he smiled, that tired, genuine smile that always felt like home. "Yes," I told her. "It is." She didn't understand. Maybe she never would. But for the first time in my life, I didn't need her to. The night of the last tour stop, Jackson surprised me. We were in Chicago, in a venue that smelled of beer and neon, with a crowd so loud the floor shook. Halfway through his set, he cut the music, grabbed the mic, and said, "I want to do something different tonight." Then he turned to me. My heart stopped. "Elliot," he said into the mic, grinning like a man with nothing left to lose, "get out here." The crowd went insane. I stumbled onto the stage, guitar in hand, eyes wide. "Jackson, what the hell?" "Play it," he said simply. "Play our song." And so I did. Hands trembling, I strummed the opening chords while he layered beats over them, weaving his world into mine. By the chorus, the crowd was singing along. Thousands of strangers shouting the words I'd once written alone in my bedroom, words I'd never thought anyone would hear. I looked at him, blonde hair plastered to his forehead, grin wide and wild, and realized this was it. This was what we were building, not just music, but something that couldn't be silenced. Something bigger than fear. When the lights went down and the crowd chanted for more, we didn't go back out. We stayed behind the curtain, gasping for air, sweat dripping, hearts pounding. "That was insane," I breathed. "That," he said, pulling me into a hug so fierce I thought I'd break, "was freedom." I believed him. After the tour, things slowed down. The storm of headlines gradually moved on to fresher scandals, hungrier prey. The paparazzi lingered, but less than before. Some fans drifted away, but the ones who stayed, God, they were loyal. We rented a small apartment in Los Angeles. Nothing glamorous. A rooftop view, cracked paint, the hum of traffic below. But it was ours. Most mornings, I'd wake to find him already up, tinkering with a beat on his laptop, headphones askew. He looked so peaceful like that, lost in the only world that ever truly made sense to him. And sometimes, he'd pause, glance at me with that mischievous smile, and say, "Your turn." Then we'd sit together, scribbling lyrics, strumming chords, chasing the spark that only existed between us. It wasn't always easy. Fame never really lets you go. Some nights he'd come home late, drunk on the noise of clubs and flashing lights, and I'd sit awake, wondering if I was enough to hold him steady. Other nights, I'd spiral, scrolling through old hate comments, reliving every cruel word until I couldn't breathe. But whenever either of us started to fall, the other pulled us back. Sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, sometimes just with a hand reaching across the dark. And little by little, the cage around us loosened. One night, on that cracked rooftop, I asked him the question I'd been carrying for months. What if this doesn't last? What if we burn out? What if the world tears us apart again? He set down his headphones, turned to me and said, "Then we start over, again and again if we have to, because I'd rather keep losing the world than lose you once." And for the first time, I believed in forever. We didn't fix the world. We didn't change everyone's minds. Some people still hated us. Some always would. But we built something stronger than approval. We built truth. And every time we stepped on stage, every time a stranger sang our words back to us, every time I woke up to find his arm heavy across my chest, I knew it was enough. Because love isn't about applause. It isn't about headlines or battles won. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when the world doesn't. The last song we wrote on that rooftop became the truest thing I'd ever created. It wasn't about scandal or survival. It wasn't even about music. It was about us. The chorus was simple. 2 broken notes, 1 song. When we finally played it live, under a sky full of lights, the crowd swayed together like a single heartbeat. And in that moment, I knew. We hadn't just survived the storm. We had become the music of it. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.